You can tell within minutes. Not from the clothes exactly, not from the car or the watch or the neighborhood. Those are the things people think they are reading. But what they are actually reading is something older and quieter and considerably harder to fake. It is in the way they hold a room, the way they respond to being contradicted, the way they talk about money, or more precisely, the way they do not talk about money. The way they seem to have decided, at some level so deep, it does not feel like a decision, that the world is fundamentally a safe place that will continue to accommodate them. That is old money. And it is nothing like what you think it is. Let us start with the most visible difference, and then go underneath it to where the real difference lives. New money is loud, not always in volume, sometimes in presence. In the watch that is slightly too large for the wrist. In the car that is slightly too expensive for the neighborhood. In the way the price of things enters conversation just a beat too often. The renovation cost this much. The bottle was this vintage. The trip was this many nights at this kind of property. The numbers arrive. Not always as boasts. Sometimes just as facts. But they arrive. And their arrival is the tell. Old money is silent. Not quiet, as in reserved or cold. Silent, as in money, is simply not information worth transmitting. Of course the house is large. Of course the school is private. Of course the table at the restaurant was there when they arrived, rather than held for 15 minutes at the bar. These things are not achievements. They are weather. You do not narrate the weather, you just exist inside it. This difference is not primarily about taste or sophistication. It is about relationship with money itself. New money has a relationship with money that is still active, still charged, still recent enough that the contrast with before is alive in the body. The person who grew up without it and acquired it knows, in a cellular way, what the other side felt like. And that knowledge creates a pull toward display, not out of vulgarity, out of reality. The reality that things used to be different and now they are not, and the difference is significant, and significant things tend to want to be acknowledged. Old money has no contrast. There is no before. The wealth is not an achievement that arrived. It is a context that has always existed. Like the language you grew up speaking. You do not think about English when you are speaking English. You just speak. Old money just exists inside wealth the way you exist inside your first language. Fluently. Unconsciously. Without needing to name it. This produces two entirely different psychologies. And those psychologies show up in every domain of life in ways that are fascinating and often counterintuitive. Take risk. New money is often surprisingly risk-averse. This seems paradoxical, given that acquiring significant wealth usually requires taking significant risks. But once the money arrives, the relationship to risk frequently inverts. Because new money knows what losing feels like, knows it in a way that is not theoretical, knows it from before. And that knowledge creates a protective instinct around what has been built, a hypervigilance about preservation. You worked too hard and came from too far to lose this. The money is protected because the memory of not having it is still active. Old money is paradoxically more comfortable with risk in certain ways. Not reckless risk, not the adrenaline seeking of someone trying to prove something, but a structural comfort with uncertainty that comes from knowing, at a level that does not require conscious thought, that the floor is very far down. That even significant loss does not mean what it means for most people. That the family infrastructure will absorb mistakes in a way that makes mistakes less existential. This comfort with risk is one of the quiet advantages of generational wealth that almost never gets discussed. When failure is not catastrophic, you can attempt things that might fail. And the willingness to attempt things that might fail is one of the primary engines of building more. Now take the question of relationships, and how each approaches the question of who belongs in their world. New money often experiences a period of social confusion. The old world does not fully fit anymore. The new world is not fully accessible yet. There is a gap, a waiting room between two social universes. And in that waiting room, new money sometimes makes the mistake of trying to buy their way into the new world. The donation to the right institution, the membership to the right club, the association with the right names. These work partially, they open doors, but they do not produce belonging. and the absence of belonging in a room full of people who look like they have. Everything is one of the more disorienting experiences available to the newly wealthy. Old money does not buy belonging because old money never had to. The belonging was structural. It was in the school, the summer place, the family friend who sat on the board. The belonging came before the individual had done anything to deserve it or earn it. It was inherited along with everything else. And this produces a social ease that is almost impossible to replicate because it is not based on achievement or effort or the right moves. It is based on having been inside the structure for so long that the structure feels like self. This is where old money produces something that new money finds genuinely difficult to understand: a certain lack of hunger, a certain absence of the drive to prove, because proving requires an audience that doubts. And old money has never faced an audience that doubts. The legitimacy was never in question, so it was never something to establish. And the absence of that particular need creates a psychological spaciousness that reads as confidence, but is actually something more fundamental. It is the absence of the need to be seen, because being seen has never been a concern. Existence was always sufficient. New money is still, at some level, making the case for having arrived, the case for deserving the room, the case that the number in the account corresponds to something real about who they are. And making the case requires an audience. And requiring an audience creates a certain kind of vulnerability, a sensitivity to being doubted or dismissed or not taken seriously that old money simply does not carry. Because old money never learned to carry it. Nobody ever made them make the case. There is also the question of how each group relates to work. And this one is more nuanced than the obvious narrative suggests. The obvious narrative is that new money works and old money does not. That new money is hungry and old money is comfortable. And there is something to this, but it misses the more interesting truth underneath it. New money often has a complicated relationship with stopping, with the idea that the work could end and everything would be okay. Because everything being okay without the work feels dangerous in a way that is hard to articulate. Because the work is the thing that created the safety. And stopping the thing that created the safety feels like threatening the safety. So new money keeps working, often past the point of necessity, often at the expense of the other parts of life that the money was supposed to make possible. The freedom that was supposed to arrive with financial success gets perpetually deferred because the mechanism that created the success cannot be turned off without triggering the old anxiety. Old money has a different relationship with work entirely. Work is optional in a structural sense. This does not mean old money does not work. Many do, and seriously. But the relationship with the work is different because the existential stakes are different. Work is chosen rather than required. And chosen work tends to look different from required work. It tends to be more aligned with actual interest, less driven by external validation, less frantic, more directed by internal compass than by market demand. This difference in relationship to work produces a difference in what each group tends to build. New money often builds things that are legible to the market, things that can be valued and recognized and monetized and pointed to, because building things that the market values is how new money got here. Old money more often builds things that are legible to history, institutions, collections, foundations, things with a longer time horizon, because the time horizon they inherited is already longer than most people can imagine. And then there is the question of what each group passes on, because here's where it gets genuinely interesting. New money passes on assets, bank accounts, properties, businesses, portfolios. These are real and significant and transformative for the generation that receives them. But assets alone do not produce old money psychology. You can inherit $10 million and still feel new to the room, still feel the need to prove, still experience the social anxiety of someone who is not sure they belong. Because what old money actually passes on is not primarily the money. It is the relationship with the money, the unconscious ease, the structural belonging, the absence of the proving reflex, the long time horizon, the assumption of accommodation. These things are transmitted not through legal documents, but through environment, through the schools, through the dinner table conversations, through the way adults around you treated wealth as furniture rather than achievement. Through 1,000 daily calibrations that add up over years and generations to a psychology that is fundamentally different from the one produced by watching wealth arrive from the outside. This is why second-generation wealth is the hardest generation. The first generation has the hunger and the drive and the memory of before to motivate them. The third generation has had long enough for the psychology to transmit and settle. The second generation has the money without the hunger that built it, and without the generational depth that makes the ease feel natural. They are caught between two psychologies, old enough to feel entitled, new enough to feel insecure. This is the generation that loses it most often, and the ones who keep it are usually the ones who found something worth working for that was not the money itself. Here is what old money and new money share that neither group tends to admit. Both are defined by money, just in different directions. Old money is defined by its permanent presence. New money is defined by its recent arrival. And both of those definitions are, at their core, a relationship with an abstraction that has been given enormous power over human experience. The old money heir who cannot separate their identity from their name is no more free than the new money founder who cannot stop working past the point of necessity. Both are being run by the money in ways they did not choose and may not fully see. The chains just look different. Real freedom from money, if such a thing exists, is probably not about the amount. It is about the relationship, about whether you are using it or whether it is using you, about whether your sense of self requires it to be a certain size or a certain kind or a certain age. That freedom does not come from inheriting it, and it does not come from earning it. It comes from understanding what you actually are without it. And that is a question both old money and new money spend a great deal of effort avoiding. Because the answer, it turns out, is the same for everyone. Just a person, trying to figure out what matters. The number in the account does not change the question. It just changes the cost of avoiding it.